Everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to do the first autumn update today. We're going to get the season models together and trying to see what they're showing for the coming season for the autumn. Of course, it's early days, it's only June. Have another couple of updates in July and August anyway, and the big update will be in August when I'm going to have to come to a actual forecast based upon these longer range models as for what I believe is going to happen through the autumn of 2014. But this is the first update. This is just starting us off really. So we get all the models together in a moment, have a look at them. Before I go on with that though, just make sure you're advertising. There's video ads on my page is at GazMovies.com. Hit play on the video ad. You'll be supporting GazMovies.com. Thanks so much for doing that. The video ads basically pay for websites. I couldn't sit here and talk to you via the website without the advertising, because that's what pays for me to have the website. So thanks for getting involved and help you to support GazMovies.com that way. Just to say about the charts I'm using, the models I'm using for this update, you can find a link to just about all of them, I think, now on the links page. So go and check that out if you want to see any of these charts for yourself. And what else is there to say? Oh yeah, we're without the Russian model this month, and we're without the Japanese as well this month. They'll be coming on board next month, but they only go out to September for this month's update, so I won't be using those. They only go out to the very start of the autumn, no point including those in video. And the Korean model, it looks like it's gone, so I don't think we'll be using the Korean either for monthly or for seasonal updates for the time being. That looks like it's been pretty well well, I think they're still using the actual model on the Korean website, but I don't think they're making the charts public anymore, so we won't be able to use that. Never mind, we've got plenty of models to be going on with, so let's start off with the Brazilian model. This is just taking us up to October. This is the anomaly for August, September and October. The rest of the charts you see will take us through the whole of the autumn, but this one stops at October. And this is 500 millibar heights, first of all, from the Brazilian model. What we're seeing here is a big trough of low pressure at 500 millibars being signalled to be sitting to the east of the northeast of British Isles over Scandinavia. High pressure is down to southwest around the Azores. So the flow is basically westerly, it's flat, westerly or northwesterly, and the most unsettled conditions with that sort of anomaly would be in the north and east. Remember the Brazilian model is always a little bit different because these dark red colours are below average heights, whereas the greens and blues are above average heights. On a typical 500 millibar height anomaly, that would be the other way round, so this one is always a little bit more confusing. But that's a really deep trough of low pressure that it's signalling there up to the east and the northeast of the country. The temperature excuse me, the temperature anomaly shows that we're around average or a little bit above, actually. Northern areas perhaps a little bit above average, elsewhere it's around normal, but certainly no sign of anything particularly cold coming there. The flow is generally flat westerly off the Atlantic, but with such a deep trough over Scandinavia, you would expect some northwesterly sort of polar maritime influences, so it's a little bit surprising actually, but the temperature anomaly is as warm as that. I would expect on that sort of setup for it to be a little bit cooler than that. The rainfall anomaly is generally above average, particularly in the east. Of course, that's just got a great big trough of low pressure churning away to the east of the country, so particularly wet around those eastern coasts in the North Sea. Above average rainfall, though, generally across most parts of the country. So a coolish, wettish sort of autumn being signalled by the Brazilian model. The next model we're going to look at is the NASA model, the experimental model from NASA, and these are 500 millibar heights first of all. This is more typical of what you would expect really through an autumn. We've got a trough of below average heights around Iceland, got a ridge of above average height sitting to the southwest, that's extending in from the Atlantic into the southwest. The flow with that would be generally westerly to southwesterly. That isn't really a deviation from what you'd expect, to be honest. It's a fairly average sort of setup for an autumn in this country. Big ridge of high pressure though, above average heights anyway, which extrapolates to high pressure, sitting up to the north of Scandinavia. That could perhaps take over pattern at times, give us easy winds, but generally I think it's that Atlantic sort of setup that's dominating, bringing the winds in from the southwest. Consequently, temperatures are forecast to be above average. Quite a warm autumn being signalled there. Anything up to 1 degree above average, generally across most parts of the country. Most of Europe as well, actually, in most yellow colours, indicating quite a warmish sort of autumn coming up. So that's a little bit at odds with what we see from the experimental Brazilian model. And in terms of the precipitation, it looks like we're average to slightly above average with the rainfall again, particularly in the northwest, where we close that trough of low pressure, of course, around Iceland. So that's why it's a little bit wetter up there. But generally, most places coming out not far from the average, or maybe a little bit above. So yeah, both the first two models that we started with are looking quite sort of wet for the autumn. Above average rainfall generally being signalled there, but they sort of disagree on the temperatures. Brazilian nearer normal, whereas NASA is slightly above average. The Jamstec IOD next. This is for the whole of the autumn. Say all of these charts now that you're looking at are for the whole of the autumn. Temperatures, first of all, generally coming out a little bit, or maybe even slightly below average there, although it is very warm across much of the continent. Above average temperatures for most of Eurasia, actually. Mind you, look how cold it is over in America. They're having a cool summer, and if this is right, it's going to be very cool going on into the autumn as well. But anyway, I digress. Getting back to us, the temperature anomaly is near or ever so slightly below average for the autumn. In terms of precipitation, it's a little bit above average again, so we've got a bit of a trend appearing here for quite a wettish sort of autumn. We'll see whether the other models agree with this, but yeah, we've definitely got a trend there for rainfall to be slightly above average on the Jamstec IOD, with in the white or the green colours are around the country, so it is quite unsettled. What's going on there are things that got high pressure, some sort of the mid-Atlantic ridge, probably a trough of low pressure again somewhere around here, bringing the winds down from the north or the northwest. So that could sort of be in agreement with the Brazilian model in some ways. Wettest weather, it looks like it's to the east of the country, where we've probably got a trough around Scandinavia. But a coolish, wettish sort of autumn, again being signalled by Jamstec IOD. Next model to look at is the CFS version 2. I don't particularly rate this model in terms of its 3 monthly predictions, so in a moment we'll break this down into monthly interludes. But first of all, this is the 700 millibar height anomaly for the autumn, September to November, showing an area below average heights, low pressure around Iceland, above average heights in the Atlantic, and quite a strong jet stream being driven through something like that. So that's probably quite an unsettled sort of autumn signal. Temperatures, well, this is what you get with the CFS model, in that it's very difficult to really pin anything down. Most of Europe there having average temperatures, British Isles included. Is the temperature going to be above, is temperature going to be around the average through the autumn, or doesn't the model really pick up a signal? I would suspect it's the latter. But with a westerly sort of Atlantic-driven pattern, probably an above-average autumn is likely, particularly when you get to November. But of course, earlier on, if it's westerly and Atlantic-driven in September, for instance, it could be rather cool. Temperatures, precipitation rather, for the autumn coming out. Well, on the wetter side of average, really, it's around average to slightly wetter than average, particularly across northern France. But yeah, no great signal there. So let's break this down into monthly periods. First of all, this is September, the 700 millibar height anomaly for September. Quite a strong ridge there, being signalled to be around and to the north of Scandinavia. You've got a trough of low pressure in the Atlantic. So that could go either way. You could either get easterlies, keeping it quite dry, really very warm, or conversely, you could get westerlies if that trough is strong enough, bring quite an unsettled September. September is always a difficult one to pin down because it's very reliant on hurricanes and the exact track that those hurricanes take once they get into the northern Atlantic. They get caught up in the jet stream, pushed northwards. Sometimes they can have the effect of inflating this high pressure to the east and the northeast in September, whereas sometimes they can just barrel through and give a very unsettled month. More often than not, you have settled weather in September. It's quite unusual to have a wet September, but it can happen. It does happen at times. We had a run of them in the 1990s, 1993, 1995. I would suggest that the ridge is quite likely to be dominant actually through September on that, but it could go either way. As we get through to October, this is a more easier signal to decide. We've got an area of high pressure sitting just to the south west of the country, an area of above average highs, so trough of low pressure is up there. Jet stream the air around that is going something like that. So it is quite dry down to the south and the west of the country, more unsettled in the north and the east. But jet stream is going something like that. So generally on the warm side of the jet, we've got a ridge of high pressure close by. I think that would be a pretty settled October. But then we get to November, and this is probably the reason for that 700 millibar height anomaly for the autumn as a whole, looking quite unsettled, because we get to September and look at this trough of low pressure below average height setting up in the Atlantic. That's a very unsettled month being signalled there from the CFS model for November. Really, really strong jet stream roaring through the Atlantic into the British Isles. That's about as unsettled as it gets. There would be gales with that in November, no doubt, possibly severe gales and bouts of heavy rain as well. So probably not too bad a start to the autumn in September and October, a lot of dry weather, but once we get to November, watch out if that's right, because it turns really, really wet and windy and possibly quite stormy as well. Beijing Climate Centre next. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly prediction for the autumn. It's showing an area of above average heights, generally sitting around the country. Got a trough of low pressure up over Iceland, but that's being pushed quite far north. The jet stream is running to the north of the country, so that's probably quite a settled-ish sort of scenario for the autumn. The temperature anomaly is coming out around or above average with this one. So yeah, quite a mildish sort of autumn being still there. Not a great deviation from the norm, but certainly on the mildish side of average. And the precipitation, the rainfall anomaly, shows that, well, not surprisingly, it's drier than average to the west of the southwest of the country, a little bit wetter than average up to the north. But I think overall that high pressure in the Atlantic would be the driving factor through the autumn. So quite a mild, dry autumn on the Beijing Climate Centre model. Our very own next, the UK Met Office, and this is the sea level pressure anomaly for the autumn. Quite a strange one, this actually, because most of the Atlantic is forecast to be below average, and most of Europe as well, with this sea level pressure anomaly. So it implies quite an unsettled sort of water. There's no real sign of high pressure anywhere close. I wonder whether the model has gone off on a bit of a tangent actually this month. It's hard to sort of really believe that, but if it's right, anyway, it's an unsettled sort of signal for the autumn, because the sea level pressure virtually throughout the whole of the Atlantic is below average, and most of Europe as well. The temperature anomaly is coming out near or maybe a little bit above average. There we go, we're in those cream sort of colours there, so quite a mildish sort of autumn being signalled. And the precipitation anomaly, well, perhaps quite surprisingly, with such a unsettled signal from the sea level pressure, the precipitation anomaly is coming out average to slightly above average. It is on the wetter side of average, but not a great deviation from normal. But I just question whether that really makes sense, actually, what's going on there, particularly with that sea level pressure anomaly. But if it's right anyway, I think we're probably looking at quite an unsettled autumn. Finally, Hoog van den Deulen. This is the 500 millibar height anomaly from Hoog. What Hoog does always a little bit different. These are analogues based on sea surface temperature anomalies in May. This was the sea surface temperature anomaly in May, analogue based forecast. So you look at the sea surface temperature anomalies across the globe, then you compare them to past years with a similar sea surface temperature anomaly, and then from that you come up with a forecast in terms of heights, pressure, and temperature and precipitation. Anyway, hope that explains that. Here's the 500 millibar height anomaly, and it shows an area of above average height sitting around the British Isles, so high pressure is somewhere in the vicinity of the UK. The temperature anomaly is coming out warmer than average on Hoog's methodology, so quite a split here between the models that are warmer than average and those that are nearer normal. And the precipitation anomaly, the rainfall anomaly, you'll not be surprised to know, high pressure around the country, we're in those yellows, so precipitation is coming out quite dry. So that's a bit of a change on most of the charts. Getting it all together, so far I think, well, it's a split sort of pattern for this autumn. You'd expect that actually from so far out, to be honest. We're only in June, so we've got 2 more updates to go. You'd expect a lot of uncertainty. Nevertheless, I think there is a bit of a trend through all these models, which is for quite an unsettled autumn, perhaps quite a wetter than average autumn. Surprisingly, usually precipitation is, the signal for that is weaker than the temperature, but I think many of these models have sort of hinted anyway at quite an unsettled autumn, perhaps particularly November, but it's hard to say which part of the autumn is the most unsettled, but maybe later on. But anyway, I think the general trend there is for a wetter autumn, maybe. And in terms of the temperatures, not really a great signal, but there's no sign of anything particularly cold coming up. Overall, we're probably average to above average on most of these models. But it's early days. We've got another couple of updates to do. We'll do next in July, we'll do the final one in August. Next month we will have the Japanese and the Russian models to put to this as well. So we'll see what those are showing. But overall, the first update shows probably quite an unsettled and wettish autumn, with temperatures maybe on the warmer side of average. We'll see what happens in July. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.